February 19, 1945, Iwo Jima, a volcanic island 8 square miles in size, 750 miles south of Tokyo. The first wave of United States Marines waded ashore at 9 o'clock in the morning, boots sinking into black volcanic sand. Above them, Mount Suribachi rose 546 feet, silent and watching. In pockets across the island, Japanese soldiers crouched in 11 miles of interconnected tunnels. Some dug 75 feet below the surface. They had studied American tactics. They knew about the flamethrowers. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi had written in his orders, "The enemy's flame weapons are short-ranged and clumsy. Our caves will protect us." His soldiers believed him. They had reinforced concrete, volcanic rock, and depth on their side. The Americans expected to secure the island in 5 days. The Japanese expected to hold for months. Neither understood what was about to unfold. This is the story of how a weapon once dismissed became the instrument that turned stone fortresses into crematoriums. The island appeared on American strategic maps in 1943, a small speck halfway between Saipan and Tokyo. Its importance was mathematical. B-29 Superfortress bombers flying from the Marianas to Japan covered 2,400 miles round trip. Fighters could not escort them. Damaged bombers had nowhere to land. Iwo Jima would solve both problems. By January 1945, American planners designated the island as Operation Detachment. Intelligence officers estimated 21,000 Japanese defenders. Aerial photographs showed an island honeycombed with fortifications. What the photographs could not reveal was the depth of preparation. Lieutenant General Kuribayashi arrived on Iwo Jima in June 1944. He was 53 years old, a career officer who had served as military attaché in Washington. He understood American industrial capacity. He knew Japan could not win a conventional battle. His strategy was attrition. Kuribayashi transformed the island into a fortress. His engineers carved out tunnels using hand tools and explosives. They connected natural caves with man-made passages. Some tunnels were wide enough for trucks. Others barely fit a crawling man. Ventilation shafts brought air to chambers 3 stories underground. The Japanese installed steel doors, reinforced firing positions, and stockpiled ammunition in caverns that could withstand 1,000-pound bombs. The general banned banzai charges. Every soldier received orders to kill 10 Americans before dying. Firing positions were constructed with interlocking fields of fire. Artillery pieces were hidden in caves with narrow openings. After firing, crews would roll the guns back into the mountain. American observers would see only smoke. By February, the island held 730 pillboxes and 381 fortified gun positions. The tunnel system contained barracks, hospitals, storage chambers, and command posts. Some positions had multiple entrances. If Americans cleared one entrance, defenders would retreat through another passage and reappear elsewhere. The American plan called for 3 days of naval bombardment, followed by amphibious assault. The 5th Amphibious Corps, consisting of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Divisions, would conduct the landing. Total assault force, 70,000 Marines. Rear Admiral William Blandy commanded the bombardment force. He requested 10 days of shelling. He received 3. On February 16th, battleships and cruisers opened fire. Shells weighing up to 1,600 pounds struck the island. The volcanic rock absorbed the impact. The underground fortress remained intact. The M2 flamethrower entered United States military service in 1943. It consisted of 2 cylinders worn on the soldier's back, connected to a handheld nozzle. One cylinder contained compressed nitrogen, the other held 4 gallons of thickened gasoline. When triggered, the nitrogen propelled burning fuel up to 40 yards. The weapon weighed 70 pounds. Fully loaded. A trained operator could fire 6 to 8 bursts before the fuel ran out. Each burst lasted 2 to 3 seconds. The flamethrower's effective range was 20 to 25 yards. Beyond that, the flame dispersed and lost intensity. Marine Corps training manuals classified the M2 as a specialized weapon for fortified positions and cave warfare. In practice, few commanders trusted it. The weapon was heavy, dangerous to the operator, and required close-range engagement. Soldiers carrying flamethrowers became priority targets. In the Solomon Islands and the Marianas, flamethrower casualties ran 3 times higher than riflemen. Japanese intelligence reports from Saipan and Tinian noted American use of flame weapons. Kuribayashi's staff analyzed these reports. Their conclusion: flamethrowers were effective only against wooden structures and shallow positions. Deep caves with multiple chambers would defeat them. The flame would not penetrate far. The heat would dissipate in the tunnels. Defenders could retreat to interior chambers and wait. This assessment appeared in training documents distributed to Iwo Jima's garrison. One document stated, "The enemy flame weapon is a terror weapon of limited tactical value. Our fortifications render it ineffective." Japanese soldiers were instructed to target flamethrower operators first, but were assured that even if flame teams reached the cave entrances, the defenders would be safe in the deeper chambers. The Americans brought 400 M2 flamethrowers to Iwo Jima. They also brought something new, M4 Sherman tanks, modified to carry flamethrowers. These vehicles, nicknamed Zippos after the cigarette lighter, replaced the tank's main gun with an E45 flamethrower. The tank-mounted weapon had greater range, up to 150 feet, and carried 350 gallons of fuel. It could fire for 60 to 80 seconds continuously. 8 Sherman Zippo tanks landed with the assault force. Their crews had trained for 3 months in Hawaii, practicing against mock Japanese fortifications. The tactics were simple: approach the target, spray flame into the opening, withdraw, and repeat. The Japanese had never encountered this weapon in combat. February 19th, 0 hour. The bombardment lifted at 8:30. Landing craft circled offshore, waiting for the signal. At 9 o'clock, the first wave crossed the line of departure. The beach was eerily quiet. No fire met the landing craft. Marines waded ashore expecting immediate resistance. Instead, they found themselves struggling up terraces of volcanic ash. The black sand gave way beneath their boots. Men carrying heavy equipment sank to their knees. Vehicles bogged down immediately. 30,000 Marines landed in the first hour. They pushed inland 200 yards, 300, 400, still no resistance. Some wondered if the bombardment had worked after all. Then the Japanese opened fire. The bombardment had been a signal. Kuribayashi had ordered his men to hold fire until the beaches were full. At 10 o'clock, artillery and mortars erupted from hidden positions. Shells fell among the landing craft. Machine guns swept the terraces. Marines dove for cover that did not exist. The first flamethrower teams went ashore in the second wave. Their mission was to clear pillboxes near the beach. Corporal Charles Baker, 3rd Marine Division, carried an M2 toward a concrete bunker 50 yards inland. He got within 30 yards before machine gun fire killed him. His assistant, Private Robert Chen, retrieved the flamethrower and continued forward. He reached the bunker, aimed the nozzle at the firing slit, and pressed the trigger. Flame poured into the bunker. The machine gun fell silent. Chen emptied the tanks and withdrew. Minutes later, the same bunker reopened fire from a different port. The defenders had retreated through a connecting tunnel, waited for the flame to dissipate, and returned to their positions. This pattern repeated across the beachhead. Flamethrower teams would silence a position, only to have it revive minutes later. The Marines were fighting an enemy that could disappear and reappear at will. By nightfall, the Americans held a beachhead 600 yards deep at its furthest point. Casualties exceeded 2,500. The expected 5-day battle was already behind schedule. That night, Marine commanders requested additional flamethrower units and more Zippo tanks. The weapon that many had dismissed as a specialty tool suddenly appeared essential. But no one yet understood the scope of the problem beneath their feet. February 20th, the Marines pushed north and south from the beachhead. The 1st Battalion, 23rd Marines, advanced toward the base of Mount Suribachi. Every 100 yards brought them to another fortified position. Rifle fire and grenades could not dislodge the defenders. The M2 flamethrowers became the primary assault weapon. Sergeant William Harrell's team approached a reinforced pillbox near the mountain's base. The position had 4 firing ports and a steel door. Rifle fire had no effect. Harrell's flamethrower operator, Private First Class Eugene Wilson, crawled forward under covering fire. He reached the nearest port, inserted the nozzle, and fired a 3-second burst. Flame filled the interior. Screams echoed from inside. The firing stopped. Wilson withdrew and reported the position cleared. Harrell's squad advanced. As they passed the pillbox, fire erupted from a port they had not flamed. 2 Marines fell wounded. The Japanese had been in a rear chamber, waiting. This engagement taught a crucial lesson. A single flame burst was not enough. The caves had multiple rooms. Defenders could retreat to safety and return. Marine flamethrower doctrine changed that day. New orders: flame every opening, then flame again, then use demolitions to seal the position permanently. The Zippo tanks arrived on February 21st. The first to see action was commanded by Sergeant Robert James. His tank approached a large cave opening on Suribachi's lower slope. Intelligence estimated 40 Japanese soldiers inside. James positioned his tank 20 feet from the entrance, angled to prevent return fire from hitting the fuel tanks. The E45 flamethrower erupted. A gout of flame 3 feet in diameter poured into the cave. James held the trigger for 15 seconds. The flame penetrated deep into the tunnel. When it stopped, smoke billowed from the entrance. No return fire came. James advanced and repeated the procedure, this time for 20 seconds. Still no response. Engineers entered the cave wearing gas masks. They found 17 bodies in the first chamber, overcome by smoke and heat. The cave extended 200 feet back with multiple side passages. In the deepest chamber, they found 23 more bodies. The men had suffocated as the fire consumed the oxygen. The tank-mounted flamethrower had reached where the handheld version could not. By nightfall, February 21st, Marine commanders understood they had found their answer to the caves. They requested every available Zippo tank be brought ashore immediately. The logistics of flame warfare staggered even American supply capacity. Each M2 flamethrower consumed 4 gallons of fuel mix per full load. A soldier could carry enough for 6 to 8 bursts. Then he needed refilling. The Zippo tanks each held 350 gallons, but burned through it in 60 to 80 seconds of continuous firing. The fuel was not simple gasoline. It was a thickened mixture called napalm, developed at Harvard University in 1942. The name came from its ingredients, naphthenic acid and palmitic acid mixed with gasoline. The resulting gel stuck to surfaces and burned at 1400 degrees Fahrenheit. Water could not extinguish it. The gel would float on water, still burning. By February 25th, the Marines were using 5,000 gallons of napalm daily. Supply ships shuttled fuel from Saipan. Shore parties established refueling points near the front lines. Tank crews could reload in 10 minutes. Infantry flamethrower teams took longer. The process required mixing the thickening agent with gasoline in proper ratios. The Japanese had no equivalent weapon. Their flamethrowers were smaller, with ranges under 20 yards. They had few in inventory. Japan's industrial capacity could not support specialty weapons on this scale. While American factories produced napalm by the thousands of gallons, Japanese soldiers made do with whatever gasoline they could spare. This disparity extended to every aspect of the battle. American artillery fired 40,000 shells per day. Japanese guns rationed ammunition. American wounded received morphine, plasma, and evacuation to hospital ships. Japanese wounded received sake and prayers. American tanks could be repaired or replaced. Japanese tanks, once destroyed, were gone forever. February 26th, a Marine intelligence officer compiled statistics from the first week. The numbers told a story. Positions attacked with rifles and grenades alone had a 42% chance of requiring a second assault. Positions attacked with flamethrowers had a 91% clearance rate on the first attempt. Caves flamed with Zippo tanks had a 97% clearance rate. The report reached Major General Harry Schmidt, commanding the 5th Amphibious Corps. He immediately ordered all infantry battalions to double their flamethrower allocation. Every rifle company would have 2 flamethrower teams. Every tank company would have at least 1 Zippo. The weapon that had been mocked was now indispensable. The question was whether there were enough flamethrowers and enough fuel to finish the job. The tunnels went deep, and the Japanese were far from finished. March 1st. The battle entered its second week. American forces now controlled the southern half of the island, including Mount Suribachi. The famous flag raising on the summit occurred February 23rd, captured in Joe Rosenthal's photograph, but the harder fighting lay ahead. The northern two-thirds of Iwo Jima contained the most elaborate fortifications. Kuribayashi had positioned his command post in the northern sector, deep underground. His remaining forces, approximately 12,000 men, occupied positions in 3 defensive belts. Each belt contained hundreds of interconnected caves and pillboxes. The Marines attacked with systematic brutality. Rifle platoons would locate a cave entrance. Flamethrower teams would advance under covering fire. The M2 operators would flame the entrance, emptying their tanks. Then Zippo tanks would move up and pour sustained fire into the opening. Finally, engineers would seal the entrance with explosives or bulldozers. This process worked, but it was slow. Each major cave complex took hours to clear. The Japanese had built their fortress to make every yard cost American lives. The northern advance measured in feet per day, not miles. Private First Class Arthur Jackson, 3rd Marine Division, operated an M2 flamethrower. His battalion assault on Hill 362A on March 1st required clearing 47 separate cave positions. Jackson personally flamed 23 of them. His after-action report, filed March 3rd, provided a detailed account. Approached target bunker at 0830 hours. Opening measured approximately 4 feet by 6 feet. Fired first burst. Duration 3 seconds. No visible effect. Moved closer to 15 yards. Fired second burst, 5 seconds. Smoke began pouring from side vents. Waited 2 minutes. Received fire from same position. Fired third burst. Remaining fuel. Smoke intensified. Zippo tank moved forward and fired 30-second burst into same opening. Smoke changed from white to black. No further resistance from this position. Jackson survived Iwo Jima. He received the Medal of Honor for his actions, though not for the flamethrower work. That was considered standard procedure. He received the medal for single-handedly killing 50 Japanese soldiers with grenades and his rifle after his flamethrower ran out of fuel. By March 5th, the Marines had cleared approximately 4,000 cave positions. Intelligence estimated 5,000 remained. The island had become an industrial process. Locate, flame, seal, advance. The Japanese resistance had not broken, but it was being systematically eliminated, one cave at a time. The psychological effect of the flamethrowers emerged in captured documents and prisoner interrogations. Before March, the Japanese garrison had maintained strict discipline. Orders were followed, positions were held. Wounded soldiers took their own lives rather than burden their comrades. After 2 weeks of flame warfare, the psychological fabric began tearing. A diary recovered from a Japanese soldier on March 8 read, "The Americans bring fire. We cannot escape it. The caves that were our protection are now our tombs. The heat comes first, then the smoke. You cannot breathe. Your lungs burn. Some men run into the fire rather than wait for the smoke." Another document, a letter found on a dead officer dated March 10th, was never sent. "We were told the enemy flame weapons were ineffective against our fortifications. This was a lie. The flame reaches everywhere. It follows the tunnels. When one entrance burns, the smoke comes out all the others. There is no escape. Men are choosing death over the flame." Marine Intelligence Officer Captain Daniel Forrester compiled these documents into a report. His conclusion: "The enemy's will to resist has not broken, but his confidence in his defenses has been destroyed. The flamethrower has proven more effective as a psychological weapon than as a purely destructive one. The Japanese fear the flame more than artillery, more than bombs, more than rifle fire." This assessment was accurate. Japanese soldiers who would hold positions against overwhelming rifle and artillery fire would abandon positions at the approach of flamethrower teams. Some committed suicide before the flames reached them. Others attempted to flee through exits where Marine riflemen waited. The Americans had not intended to wage psychological warfare. The flamethrower was a practical tool for a specific problem. But its effect went beyond destruction. It introduced an element of horror that broke down the garrison's cohesion. By mid-March, Japanese resistance became less organized. Individual pockets fought with suicidal determination, but coordination between positions deteriorated. Communications broke down, supply distribution failed, units became isolated. Each cave complex fought its own separate battle, knowing help would not come. Kuribayashi's strategy of attrition was working. American casualties mounted daily, but the psychological cost to his own forces was unsustainable. The caves that were supposed to protect his soldiers had become traps, and the flame weapon they had dismissed was killing them in ways that statistics could not capture. March 15th, 3 weeks into the battle, American forces had advanced to the northeastern corner of the island. The final major defensive position was a complex of caves and ravines later named Death Valley. Kuribayashi had concentrated his remaining forces here, approximately 3,000 soldiers in fortifications that rivaled anything built in the southern sector. The 3rd Marine Division was assigned to clear Death Valley. The division had 7 Zippo tanks operational. Intelligence indicated the Japanese had at least 150 cave positions in the target area. The mathematics was simple and grim. Each Zippo would need to clear more than 20 positions. The handheld M2 flamethrowers would do the bulk of the work. The assault began March 16th at 0600 hours. Artillery preparation lasted 2 hours. 4,500 shells struck a quarter-square-mile area. When the Marines advanced, they found the bombardment had accomplished almost nothing. The caves were too deep, the openings too small. The real work began when the flamethrower teams moved forward. Sergeant Howard McLaughlin commanded a flamethrower team in the assault. His official report documented the day's action. From 0800 to 1600 hours, my team cleared 17 cave positions. We expended 68 gallons of napalm. We requested Zippo support 7 times. 4 positions required multiple flame treatments and demolition charges to permanently clear. Enemy resistance was fierce. We took fire from supposedly cleared positions twice. Final clearance of our assigned sector required 3 days. The statistics from Death Valley were extraordinary. The 3rd Marine Division expended 91,000 gallons of napalm over 8 days. The 7 Zippo tanks fired continuously, requiring refueling every 4 to 6 hours. Each tank crew reported barrel temperatures so high that crews could not touch metal surfaces even with gloves. The sustained firing warped gun barrels and damaged fuel systems. Maintenance crews worked through the nights to keep the vehicles operational. The Japanese lost approximately 2,800 men in Death Valley. American casualties exceeded 800. The exchange ratio favored the Americans, but the cost in time and resources was immense. Each cave had to be approached individually. Each required the same procedure: locate, suppress, flame, verify, seal. There were no shortcuts. By March 24th, Death Valley was declared secure. The organized resistance on Iwo Jima had effectively ended. What remained was a grim mop-up operation that would continue for weeks. March 26, 1945. The American flag flew over Iwo Jima. The island was declared secure. The formal ceremony was brief. Marines stood in formation on the captured airfield. Generals spoke of victory and sacrifice. No one mentioned that small pockets of Japanese soldiers still held caves across the island. The final statistics were compiled in April. American casualties, 6,821 killed, 19,189 wounded. 26,010 total casualties from a force of 70,000. Japanese casualties, 21,000 killed, 216 captured. The Japanese garrison had fought almost to the last man. The cost in material was equally staggering. American forces expended 685,000 artillery shells. Aircraft dropped 9,200 tons of bombs. Naval guns fired 25,000 rounds, and flamethrower teams consumed approximately 230,000 gallons of napalm over 36 days of combat. That last figure deserves attention. 230,000 gallons. That is 23,000 loads for an M2 flamethrower. It is 650 full loads for a Zippo tank. This fuel came from refineries in California, was transported 5,000 miles by ship, was pumped ashore onto a volcanic island, and was ignited inside thousands of caves. The logistical achievement was as impressive as the tactical success. The strategic value of Iwo Jima justified the cost. By April, American fighters were using the captured airfields. B-29 bombers made emergency landings there. The island saved an estimated 24,000 American airmen who would have ditched in the ocean without this refuge. Future bombing raids on Japan operated with fighter escort and better survival rates. But for the men who fought there, Iwo Jima meant something else. It meant volcanic sand that swallowed vehicles. It meant sulfur smell that never left your clothes. It meant caves that hid death. And it meant flame, rivers of it, columns of it, flame that poured into darkness and smoke that billowed out. Flame that turned stone into furnaces and made the earth itself a weapon. The flamethrower had proven decisive. This weapon, once questioned by commanders and mocked by the enemy, had become the essential tool for victory. The Japanese had fortified Iwo Jima better than any other Pacific island. The Americans had brought enough fire to burn them out anyway. The after-action reports written in the months following Iwo Jima transformed American tactical doctrine. The Marine Corps Gazette published a special issue in July 1945 dedicated to lessons learned. An article by Major General Graves Erskine, 3rd Marine Division commander, stated, "The flamethrower proved to be the single most effective weapon against fortified cave positions. No other weapon system achieved comparable results. Future operations against fortified positions must include substantial flamethrower allocation and dedicated fuel supply chains." The numbers supported this conclusion. Statistical analysis showed the positions attacked without flamethrowers required an average of 3 assaults to clear. Positions attacked with handheld flamethrowers required 1.3 assaults on average. Positions attacked with tank-mounted flamethrowers required 1.07 assaults on average. Essentially, one attack cleared the position. The casualty ratios were equally telling. Marine infantry assaulting a cave position without flame support suffered an average of 4.2 casualties per position cleared. With M2 flamethrower support, casualties dropped to 1.8 per position. With Zippo tank support, casualties dropped to 0.9 per position. These statistics represented more than numbers. Each data point was a life, a Marine who died or did not die based on the weapons available. The flamethrower had saved thousands of American lives by making cave warfare survivable. The Japanese learned these lessons too late. Documents captured after the war revealed that Imperial General Headquarters issued new fortification guidelines in April 1945 after Iwo Jima fell. The new guidelines stated, "Cave defenses must be designed with flame warfare in mind. Tunnels should have water reservoirs for cooling. Ventilation shafts must be protected by multiple right angles to prevent flame penetration. Emergency exits must be concealed from external observation." These modifications would have made the caves of Iwo Jima far more resistant to flame attack, but April 1945 was too late. Japan was running out of time, resources, and fortified islands. The plans for defending the home islands included cave fortifications, but they would never be tested. The atomic bombs dropped in August ended the war before American forces invaded Japan's main islands. The flamethrower's moment had come and gone. Iwo Jima was its proving ground. The weapon would be used again in Okinawa and Korea, but never again with such decisive effect. The perfect storm of conditions, deep caves, determined defenders, and unlimited fuel would not repeat itself. Technical documentation from the battle provided insights into the weapon's performance under extreme conditions. The M2 flamethrower, designed for a service life of 50 uses, was being fired 200 to 300 times per unit on Iwo Jima. Maintenance records showed that 73% of M2 units required major repairs or replacement during the battle. Fuel valves failed, ignition systems malfunctioned, hoses developed leaks. The weapon was being pushed beyond its design limits. The Zippo tanks fared better, but still suffered. The intense heat generated by continuous firing warped steel components. Fuel pumps overheated, barrels eroded from the corrosive napalm. Tank crews reported that after extended firing, the interior temperature of the vehicle would rise to over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Operating the weapon became physically dangerous to the crew. Yet the weapons kept firing. American industrial capacity provided replacement parts overnight. Maintenance crews worked around the clock. When a flamethrower failed, another was already waiting. When a Zippo tank went down for repairs, another took its place. The Japanese had no such luxury. Captain Robert Fuller, ordnance officer for the 5th Marine Division, kept detailed maintenance logs. His report, filed March 31st, documented the supply chain. We received 214 replacement M2 flamethrowers during the campaign. We received 633 replacement fuel cylinders. We received approximately 2,000 ignition cartridges. We performed field repairs on 89 M2 units. We evacuated 43 units as beyond repair. The maintenance burden was substantial, but supply kept pace with demand. That final sentence captured the American advantage. Supply kept pace with demand. It always did. While Japanese soldiers rationed ammunition and went hungry, American Marines had unlimited flame fuel. While Japanese maintenance crews improvised with salvaged parts, American maintenance crews had warehouses of new components. The comparison extended beyond flamethrowers. American forces consumed 5,200 tons of supplies daily on Iwo Jima. Japanese forces had stored 4 months of supplies, which ran out in 3 weeks. American wounded received evacuation to hospital ships within hours. Japanese wounded received first aid in caves. American forces had portable radios for every company. Japanese forces relied on runners and wire communications that the Americans cut constantly. Industrial democracy versus military dictatorship. Abundance versus scarcity. These contrasts defined the Pacific War, and nowhere were they more visible than in the flame-lit caves of Iwo Jima. The human cost extended beyond the casualty lists. Psychological casualty reports from Iwo Jima documented 812 cases of combat fatigue severe enough to require evacuation. This was higher than any previous Pacific battle. The nature of cave warfare, the close quarters, the flame, the smoke, the bodies, created trauma that statistics struggled to capture. Corpsmen treating the wounded reported injuries unlike anything seen in conventional combat. Burns from flamethrowers were horrific. Third-degree burns covering entire bodies, lungs damaged by smoke inhalation, soldiers who had been caught in the open when napalm splashed on them. These injuries came from both sides. Japanese soldiers burned in their caves suffered identically to Marines caught by enemy fire. Dr. James Patterson, a Navy surgeon aboard the hospital ship Samaritan, recorded his observations. The burn casualties from Iwo Jima were unlike previous campaigns. The injuries were more severe, the psychological trauma more profound. Men who survived direct flame contact were rarely the same. The weapon that proved so tactically effective came with a human cost we are only beginning to understand. The Japanese perspective emerged in post-war interviews with survivors. Lieutenant Musashino Kikuchi, one of the 216 prisoners, was interviewed in May 1945. "We were prepared to die. We expected artillery, bombing, infantry assault. The flame was different. It was not a soldier's death. It was cremation while still alive. When the Americans brought the tanks with flame, we knew our deaths would be terrible. Some men chose their own end rather than wait for the fire." These testimonies were difficult to read then and remain difficult now. They documented the reality of a weapon that, while militarily effective, caused suffering beyond conventional warfare. The Marines who operated the flamethrowers carried their own burdens. Private First Class Kenneth Walsh, interviewed in 1987 for an oral history project, said, "I did my job. I followed orders. But I see those caves in my sleep. I hear the screams. I smell the burning. We were told it was necessary. Maybe it was. But necessary does not mean easy to live with." The battle for Iwo Jima saved American lives by shortening the war and providing bomber bases. The flamethrower was the primary tool that made victory possible. These facts coexist with the other fact: war is horror, even when necessary. June 1945, 3 months after Iwo Jima was declared secure, the first B-29 made an emergency landing on the captured airfield. The plane, named Lucky Lady, had been hit by anti-aircraft fire over Tokyo. 2 engines were out. The pilot, Captain Richard Bentley, had a choice: ditch in the ocean or try for Iwo Jima. He chose Iwo. The runway crews saw the crippled bomber approaching. Ambulances and fire trucks deployed. The B-29 touched down with its landing gear damaged, skidded, and came to rest 50 yards from the runway's end. All 11 crew members survived. They had flown over Iwo Jima during the battle, seen the smoke and fire from 30,000 feet. Now they stood on the island their brothers had captured. This scene repeated 596 times during the last months of the war. 596 B-29s made emergency landings on Iwo Jima. Assuming 10 crew members per aircraft, that's 5,960 airmen who survived because the island had been captured. The American casualties taking Iwo Jima totaled 26,010. The lives saved exceeded 6,000. The calculation seems cold, measuring lives against lives, but this was the arithmetic of war. Commanders made decisions based on these numbers. The Joint Chiefs of Staff judged Iwo Jima a necessary operation because the mathematics favored it. 26,000 casualties to gain a base that would save 6,000 lives and enable the strategic bombing campaign that would end the war. The flamethrower was essential to this calculation. Without it, Iwo Jima might have taken 3 months to capture instead of 5 weeks. American casualties would have been far higher. The bomber bases would have come online later. The war would have lasted longer. More people would have died on all sides. This does not make the weapon noble. It makes it effective. There is a difference. Today, the island is called Iwo To. The tunnels remain, sealed but not destroyed. The Reunion of Honor Association brings together American and Japanese veterans every 5 years. Old men who tried to kill each other now stand together in remembrance. They visit the caves, now silent and dark. They remember the fire.